Oh, a new Smash Bros. Trailer. That's cool. They Thanos everyone! Except Kirby. I guess that makes Kirby the most powerful character in the entire Nintendo canon, then. Huh. You know, I guess it does make sense. That would explain why Kirby games are usually pretty easy. Just isn't a character out there that can hope to pose a threat to the Kirbmeister. Well, since Kirby is so powerful, I bet he could get through an entire adventure with an arm tied behind his back. Oh wait, no, even better, without jumping. Yeah, that could be interesting. Let's look into this. Is it possible to beat Kirby's Return to Dreamland without jumping? Before we get into this, we have to establish the rules and define what exactly a jump is. There isn't any official jump counter in this game, so we'll have to come up with the definition ourselves. The definition I propose, and the one we'll be using for this challenge, is this specific move that can be found in the pause menu while being normal Kirby. This move, jump/hover, is essentially what happens when pressing the 2 button while on land or in the air. This is the move we're trying to avoid using. Anything else in the game is fair game. If we can get through every stage and ultimately beat the final boss without resorting to using this move, then it's a challenge successful. Now, we obviously aren't going to get very far just by walking. So the question becomes, what methods will we use to get by without traditional jumping? 2 words. Copy abilities. Some copy abilities in the game give us what I'll call jump replacements. Various moves that allow us to essentially jump without jumping. And what do you know, the first copy ability in the game is actually quite useful for us. The copy ability in question? Sword. The sword copy ability has 2 moves that we're interested in. The first of which is the upward slash. This move allows Kirby to gain upwards movements that's actually quite comparable to the height of a regular jump. With this move at our disposal, we should be able to clear most simple platforming challenges with ease. As for the second move, it also has some utility. The drill stab allows us to easily cross gaps that are 2 Kirbys wide. It also gives us some invincibility frames, which can prove especially useful during boss fights. Overall, while Sword does give us some close parallels to a regular jump ability, it's not quite as good in all circumstances. It gives us the option of upwards movement or good forwards movement, but not both at once. And the moves it does give us have entirely predetermined distances that they travel, which gives us less flexibility compared to the regular jump. But overall, it's a decent all-arounder replacement for our jump that we should be able to get some good use out of. So yeah, as soon as we get ourselves a sword, we should be in pretty good shape for the near future. That is, if we can get a sword. Let's jump into Cookie Country Stage 1 and talk about this. Our problem here stems from the fact that this game feels the need to force us to learn the entirely optional skill of jumping before it lets us anywhere near a copy ability. These pits are its means to do so. They're too wide to dash across, and once you're inside, the only logical thing to do is press that oh-so-alluring 2 button to get out. But we can't do that. It would mean that the run dies in the first level. Nay, at the first real obstacle. I will not have it. I was hoping that I wouldn't have to resort to it so quickly, but it seems that the time has already come to unveil my secret weapon. Multiplayer. You see, in Kirby's Return to Dreamland, up to 4 differently colored Kirbys can work together to solve their problems. It's like Mass Attack, except in a normal Kirby game. What matters to us now is the fact that one Kirby can suck up and then spit out another Kirby. This allows us to cross these gaps without jumping even once. Having overcome the jumping tutorial, it's a straight shot to the sword copy ability, and with our new armament in hand, we can proceed through the level without incidents. Until we get to this obstacle. The flying tutorial. This barrier is designed to be slightly too tall to get over via jumping, thus forcing the player to learn how to fly. Unfortunately, since our upward slash gives us about as much height as a regular jump, we also can't get over it. But not to worry, we can pull out multiplayer again. In this game, Kirby can ride atop another Kirby. Using this mechanic, we should be able to get that extra bit of height we need to overcome this wall. There is one problem though. The only way to get off a Kirby that you're riding is by jumping, which obviously we can't do. But there is another way. In Kirby's Return to Dreamland, players other than Player 1 can join in and drop out at any time. If we have a Kirby drop out while Pink Kirby is riding it, then we're left with a Pink Kirby slightly in the air and fully able to perform an upward slash, and with that little boost, we can make it past this obstacle. Our next obstacle in this level doesn't take long to appear. Before us is a key, and these are evil. The reason being that once you pick up a key, all your moves performed with the one button go away and are replaced with throwing the key. This means that we can't use any of our jump replacements while holding a key, or any other object in the same vein. What we end up having to do is throw the key ahead of us and then run after it using our abilities. In this particular case it's not that difficult, but this is certainly a mechanic that could cause us trouble in the future. After that obstacle, the last thing we run into of any note in Stage 1 is the Ultra Sword, which, given its lack of ability to grant us a jump replacement, we simply ignore and finish the level. Stage 2 only has one particularly interesting obstacle. What you're supposed to do here is jump while holding the cannon to get the next part of the level to appear. Unfortunately, we can't do that. So what I did instead was have Yellow Kirby hold the cannon, then have Pink Kirby upward slash into a cannonball. Getting hit by the cannonball sent Pink Kirby even higher, high enough to reach the switch by slashing their swords through the blocks. And there we go, on to Stage 3. Here we run into this massive cliff. It is way too tall to upward slash up. It's even too high to get up by using another Kirby as a stepping stool. It's too high to get over with a stack of 4 Kirbys. What we ended up having to do is get a sword for the top and bottom Kirbys in the stack. I'd perform an upward slash with the bottom Kirby, then while in mid-air, I would drop out with the Kirby directly beneath the top Kirby. At this point, with the top Kirby freed from its ride, I'd perform an upward slash with it and overcome the obstacle. After that, we can finish the stage by relying on tactics we've already established. Stage 4 then features the exact same obstacle, but this time I found a better way past it. I discovered that when performing an upward slash, the move can be used again before hitting the ground. As it turns out, the move's cooldown takes less time than it takes to perform the move and fall all the way back down to where you started the move from. This allows us to fly infinitely using the sword copy ability. This discovery is a game changer. And hey, what do you know, it's time for the boss. As it turns out, Wispy Woods isn't all that difficult even when you can't jump. And with that, Cookie Country is cleared. On to Raisin Ruins. Now, before we continue, I would like to mention the fact that this challenge fundamentally changes the way you play the game, and makes nearly every level significantly more difficult than it otherwise would be. That being said, I don't have the time in this video to talk about every single hurdle we come across. So going forward, I'm only going to be talking about particularly novel or difficult challenges. That doesn't mean that the rest of the game is easy, but I do need to be a bit selective about what I talk about here. That being said, Raisin Ruins doesn't get all that interesting until Stage 2. This stage features water, and while this may look like a jump, it's activated by pressing up on the D-pad, so by our rules, it's not a jump. That's actually all I have to say about Stage 2. Stage 3 is noteworthy for introducing us to two new copy abilities, the first of which is Tornado. Tornado has one move that we're interested in, the Tornado Attack. This move allows Kirby to take flight as a practically invincible tornado. This move is fast and is only vulnerable to bottomless pits and crushing, which allows us to get through otherwise nearly insurmountable obstacles like spikes and lava with ease. On the negative side, this move is highly impractical to fly infinitely with, and of course it's fairly difficult to control. Overall, this copy ability isn't what I'd want to be using all the time, but when it's useful, boy is it useful. The second copy ability discovered in Stage 3 is High Jump. Now, I know what you're thinking. Really? High Jump? I thought this was supposed to be a no jump run. What gives? And to that I say, High Jump is a distinct move from the regular jump and is activated with the 1 button. So by our rules, it's legal. The question is then, is it useful? Well, High Jump allows us to, jump high. There's not much else to it. On the plus side, this ability allows us to fly incredibly easily and can get a significant amount of height very quickly. On the downside, that's about all it can do. We do not have the ability to jump low with this copy ability, nor do we have any means of attack aside from jumping and diving, which leaves a lot to be desired. It's got a certain set of skills, and while it may not be the best set of skills under all circumstances, I can almost guarantee it'll be useful at some point. With Stage 3 being practically built around these two abilities, we don't run into many issues and can move on to Stage 4. After spending way more time on Stage 4 than I care to admit, I learned one important thing. When a player other than Pink Kirby goes off screen and gets teleported to Pink Kirby, they keep holding whatever they were holding at the time. On to Stage 5, where we tornado the boss to death, no problem, and it's on to Onion Ocean. Now, I thought Onion Ocean would be pretty easy since it's mostly water levels, and you can't jump underwater anyways. Boy, was I wrong. I found that the best way through Stage 1 was with Tornado. This was because of all the spikes and lava in the level, and I should probably explain why those are such a problem. The issue stems from the fact that in this run we live and die on our copy abilities. Our problem here is the fact that touching spikes or lava always makes you lose your copy ability. Adding insult to injury is the fact that if our copy ability then touches the spikes or lava, it's immediately destroyed, which more often than not means we need to restart the level. And this run is super demoralizing whenever you need to restart a level, because restarting a level usually doesn't mean just restarting the level. More often than not, it also means going back to a previous level to get a copy ability first, and if we've decided to use a more specialized copy ability, it can also mean playing part of an additional level to get that ability. In this particular case, whenever we fail to trip to 1-1 to grab sword and then to 2-3 to get tornado. This process can take up to 3 or 4 minutes, and that's just to restart the level, let alone get to where we were in the level. Now, the other interesting thing about Stage 1 is that it's our first run-in with another useful copy ability, Spear. Spear only has one move that helps with our mobility, but it's a good one, the Spear Copter. What this move allows us to do is fly much like Tornado, but in a much easier to control way. Like Tornado, however, this move is nearly impossible to fly infinitely with. This is because the Spear Copter is a move which must be charged for a few seconds before you can use it. This also means that we can't react quickly when using Spear, which can be a problem if we're put under a time crunch. Overall, Spear gives us the most precise jump replacement in the game, and can be incredibly useful when being slow and methodical is an option, but can fall flat when we have to improvise or act quickly. Anyways, we are able to finish Stage 1 by using Tornado, and can get all the way to Stage 3 before hitting another roadblock. But first, let's talk about something I discovered in Stage 2. Fire and water aren't completely useless. Both of them have a dash move that can give us a bit of air. Fire's dash move can even allow us to climb walls, while Water's dash can be comboed into a very good down air after crashing into a wall. While I don't love either of these copy abilities and probably wouldn't intentionally bring one with me into a level, they can be used as a means to continue a level after losing another copy ability if they happen to be around. Now to stage 3. What we find here is yet another super copy ability area. And this one is quite tricky to get through by ignoring the super ability on account of the tall obstacles under low ceilings. The strategy I went for was engaging multiplayer so I could have one Kirby take on the monster flame and clear obstacles, while the other Kirby kept a normal copy ability to use to traverse the level. This is actually a strategy I had employed in previous levels, but here there were some complications, or rather one massive complication. Bottomless pits. This area is absolutely filled with them. Now, alone they wouldn't necessarily be so bad, but when paired with a bunch of thin platforms, they become a nightmare. With a jumpless Kirby stranded on such a small platform, it gives us limited options as to where we can get the off-screen multiplayer teleport to go to. Even the successful attempt wasn't all that pretty. In fact, let me just show you it. Nothing else in Onion Ocean can really hold a candle to that. So let's move on to White Wafers. Stage 1 isn't anything special, but it does introduce us to one last useful copy ability. Fighter. Fighter may be the most versatile copy ability we have at our disposal now. The uppercut is quite similar to the upward slash we have with Sword. We also have a very useful dash attack in the form of the flying kick, which gets us both a lot of distance as well as a decent bit of upwards movement. Both these moves also give us a very generous amount of invincibility frames, and finally we get a good down air attack that allows us to bounce off of enemies and damage them while doing so. This move is especially useful against bosses. Add on top of all of this, the huge variety of solid moves that Fighter gives us for combat, and we've got probably the new best all-around copy ability, and definitely the best copy ability for boss fights. Our next highlight is Stage 4, and boy is it a doozy. The midsection of the stage features these ice cannons, which require quite precise movement as well as juggling a French horn to avoid. And then we run into another super copy ability section, and once again we get to deal with tall obstacles under low ceilings. Hooray! Now, Snowball is a bit easier than Monster Flame to deal with, since using the ability actually gives you some progress through the level. The big issue here ended up being an annoying tendency for Pink Kirby to end up riding our second Kirby after we use Snowball, which, if you remember from earlier, makes it so we have to drop out our second Kirby to free Pink Kirby. Luckily though, this doesn't happen every time, and with some persistence we can beat this level, and take comfort in the fact that this is as tough as White Wafers gets, and move on to Nutty Noon. Unfortunately, our greeting to Nutty Noon is a nice bit of difficulty. I found that Spear was the best copy ability to take on Stage 1 with. Luckily for us, the platforms in this level seem to have been spaced specifically to allow one to get from one platform to the next using the Spearcopter ability. That doesn't mean it's easy, of course, but with some patience and clever use of our abilities, we can get through. Nutty Noon's next roadblock comes with Stage 4. The opening is meant to be played using a shoe. We can't do that. I found that the best way to subvert this part of the level was with Spear. But I used high jump instead by just kind of flying across the top of the screen. We then get to a section which is why I didn't use Spear in the previous section. The way these ropes work essentially requires the ability to ascend quickly at a second's notice. High jump is perfect for this, but with the spikes and cannons it's still not easy. Next we make it to a portion of the level which features close quarters combat, which high jump doesn't exactly excel at. Nevertheless, we can get through this stage using high jump. The Grand Doomer continues the trend of boss fights being no problem, and now we find ourselves at Egg Engines, and the first stage is a bit annoying. Here we run into a stage that calls for speed and precision. Luckily for us, Spear does prove to be fast enough, and with a bit of planning and forethought, as well as remembering that blocking exists, yes, I hadn't used it up to this point, we can make it through Stage 1. Then Stage 2 comes along and ruins our day. This stage is filled with spikes, among other hazards. Luckily, Tornado is practically custom built to handle the first part of the stage. Unluckily, Tornado definitely isn't built to handle what comes next. Small platforms over bottomless pits. As you all know by now, Tornado is very fast, very invincible, but very hard to control precisely. That makes this part of the stage a nightmare. And even the parts before this part aren't necessarily easy with Tornado either. But through some miracle, I did make it through, and I'm very glad to be leaving that level behind. After that, Egg Engines isn't too difficult, so it's time to make our way to Dangerous Dinner. This level only contains 4 stages. And one of those stages is just the boss fight. But of those 3 stages, none are easy. They're about all that's left between us and a successful no-jump run. Can we beat them? Finally, every level beaten. All that's left to overcome is a boss fight. And thus far, boss fights have been easy. Landia is no exception. Of course, the game's not done yet. After a plot twist, we're faced with a shoot 'em up section, which you can't jump in anyways, so no problem is here. And finally, we come face to face with our true enemy, Magmore. He's definitely the most difficult boss we've faced thus far, but he's still a boss, so with a couple uppercuts, then diving on him with kicks, we can defeat him twice. And now, the game is finally over. So, did we do it? Is it possible to beat Kirby's Return to Dreamland without jumping? Yes. No asterisks, no twists. It is possible to beat Kirby's Return to Dreamland without jumping. And yeah, that's the video then. If you have any feedback, constructive or otherwise, or ideas for future challenges we could try, leave a comment. I do try to read as many as I can. If you like this video, you can also like it or subscribe so you can be notified when the next one comes out. But anyways guys, until next time, I've been CMeeCraft, and I'll catch you in the next video where we'll be taking on another challenge. And I think you guys will like the game that's starring in that one. Goodbye.